Tonight is brought to you by our sponsors, Viagra, Cialis, Cymbalta, for all of you depressed individuals, and the Manufacturing Association of Artificial Joints, and all makers of hair coloring products. I need some done right now. I need to get touched up. My roots are showing. Okay, this is the historic Old Bells College building. Am I right? Yeah. This is Bells College. Everybody remember when Bells College was here? And I'm glad the College family is here because I'm going to ask them something. Why did you have separate water fountains? And one of them said white only. No, I mean, is Wayne Foster in the house? No, okay, no, I'm just kidding. Everybody remembers that. Some times have really changed since we grew up. It's just the way it was then, as Eddie says in his book. It's just the way it was. And fortunately, things have changed over years. But this is the Old Bells College. We used to all come in here and buy clothes and shoes and so forth, and now look at it. We're drinking beer and wine and water and eating sandwiches, poking fun at each other. Yeah, I know it really. So tonight is supposed to be, Lisa kind of wanted us to talk about our days of growing up in Greer. And Eddie Harvey did a great job on his book. From his perspective, growing up at what we call Greer Mill, so there are a lot of mill hills. You know, back then everybody lived, you either lived on the mill hill or you lived in the city. And everybody lived in the city, they were upper crust, and the rest of us, we were like on the other side of the track. So all the mills was on that side of the track, except Appalachian, and it was over on the other side of the super highway over there.
But most of us live in the mill hill to have fun.
That's right. So everybody really wanted to be from the mill hill because that's where all the action was. So I grew up on Victor. Buddy grew up on Victor. Steve Brown grew up on Victor. Eddie grew up at Greer Mill. We got the Appalachian folks here, Steve, Appalachian Mill Hill. Appalachian, way back there. Yay, let's hear for Appalachian. Who is that, Steve? Drew Green. I can't see that far, so it's okay. Thank you, Drew. Glad to have you here, buddy. But yeah, all the girls wanted to date guys from the Mill Hills. And all the guys wanted to date anybody, whoever we could get a date with. So, anyway, you're going to hear a lot tonight from some really good guys. Buddy Bowman used to write articles for the Greer Citizen about life on the Mill Hill. And of course, in his book, he's going to relate some things to us about life in Greer in general. And anybody else that wants to say anything, certainly welcome to do so. You heard Lisa give the ground rules earlier. Okay. One thing I wanted to ask too, Rick Danner in the house. Mayor Rick. Okay. Yeah. Okay. The Don Brown entourage will be arriving shortly. So everybody wants to be Big Don Brown, but we do have somebody just as famous and just as funny, but I don't know if we can get Big Jim Hawthorne up on the microphone tonight or not, but he tells some very funny stories as well. But we might have to unplug the microphone somewhere along the line because he gets up here. So we'll be careful with that. No ground rules other than we like everybody to be respectful. That we do have, a mixed crowd here. If you're going to say something nasty about somebody, just get them over in the corner and tell them how much you've been holding this stuff in for all these years and now you want to punch them. So now's the time to do it, right, buddy? Okay. A lot of people, I grew up on Victor. Now, my mom was a single mom, y'all know my brothers, Duck and Joe, and so my mom was a single mom on the Mill Hill. We lived on Victor, but she worked at Appalachia. I never did figure that one out because she could just walk down the street to Victor, but she had to ride over to Appalachia. But she was a single mom when single mom was kind of frowned upon back in the day. You know, now if you're a single mom, you know, everybody's like, oh yeah, I'm cool like a single mom. But you know, she raised 3 guys working in the mill, in the weave room, and I think we all 3 turned out pretty good. But I have a lot of people in my life, and we're going to talk about growing up in Greer. A lot of people, when we lived on the Mill Hill, everybody looked out for each other. And I know it was the same at Appalachia, the same at Greer Mill, because we went to school with all these people. Everybody looked out for everybody. There are a lot of people in this room right now that were older than me that I looked up to growing up, and they took care of me growing up. One of them, Buddy Bowden. One of them, Steve Brown, sitting over there. One of them, Billy White, sitting over here. These guys were part of my life growing up, and they looked out for me because I was younger than them, and I can remember to this day. One of the things Eddie Harvey said in his book is, we are who we are today because of who we were when we were kids. And there's a lot to that. So I want to thank these guys while I got them all here. You know, when we were growing up, they looked out for the young guys. You know, it's just the way it was. Like Eddie said, it's just the way it was. You know, people don't do that anymore. You walk around the mill here, if you got that line, somebody will kick your butt, take you home and tell your mom, and then you get your butt kicked again. You know, that's just the way it was. It's life. So now, all that hasn't been said. I'm going to tell a little short story about Buddy Bowden, and then I'm going to turn it over to Buddy. He's going to come up and speak a little bit. But I remember Buddy from the Mill Hill. He's a little bit older than me, but one of the first things I remember about him is he was a great basketball player. I used to go to the Victor and watch him play, and then he went on up to Greer High School, played on the varsity basketball team up there under Coach Phillip. And I'd love to go up there with my brothers and watch Buddy play basketball. He was a great athlete and a great guy. He always looked out for the younger guys on the Mill Hill. If anybody got out of line, pick on the younger guys, he'd take care of it. He'd just look out for everybody on the Mill Hill. It's just the way he was. Good guy. So Buddy and I go back a long way. Looking back on memory, I can't remember not knowing Buddy. I honestly can't remember not knowing him and Steve Brown, Billy White, all of them. I've known as far as I can remember. I'm glad they're in the house. So without further ado, Buddy Bowden.
May I have to adjust this. He's gotten taller than me. We okay there? Everybody here? Okay. I have to have a little reminders here. I'm not like this guy. You know, little notes. I'm Buddy Bowman, and just to give you a little about, most of you know that, you know, I finished high school in 3 years and was accepted at Harvard before I even finished high school. My freshman year at Harvard, I was already in Yale Business School. Went on from there, founded a couple small companies, Coca-Cola, and then went on and formed Fortune 500. I was the forerunner for that. And did these beer commercials for years.
Did you invent the internet?
Yes. Thank you for reminding me. I forget these things. But, yeah, and, well, let's back up. Okay. Let's back up. I set a record for taking the most years to get out of Greer High School. And let's let it go at that. I want to thank Lisa too. for putting this together, Amy, Gundy, and also it's just good to see all these people around here, my old friends from Greer. I live in Georgia now, so it's story time, boys. Relationships, like Gundy said, are important. All people that were scheduled here tonight happen to be Mill Hill boys. All of us are Mill Hill people. 3 of us from Victor, like Gundy said, and 1 of us from Greer Mill. Eddie's from Greer Mill. And in a way, I think we're a tribal type people. We're a brotherhood, we always have been, and we're a sisterhood. And I think that's the best way to describe it. I'm not just talking about the mill villages here in Greer, which were Victor, Appalach, Franklin, the Greer Mill, and all these people. Interchangeably, we were all, I think, part of the same tribe. I even think, I think people like Harvey Tankersley, I don't know if you guys remember Harvey. Harvey's a good friend, Dick White, who was at Slater. I went out to see Dick White being inducted into the Hall of Fame at North Greenville for basketball. And one of the things he mentioned, and one of the things that Harvey mentioned, both, was the Mill Village effect on their lives. We were very lucky. Like Gundy said, we would fight among ourselves, but don't let an outsider threaten us. And I think about taking care of my little brothers, like Gundy. And I think about Doug Stewart, his brother. I'll give you an example of how we supported one another in those days. I remember going to a Bitty Boys basketball game with where Duck was playing. And I remember sitting in the stands watching the Bitty Boys. They put up a separate goal there for these kids where they could make them a little bit easier. And Duck was a really good basketball player. The team that the little Bitty Boys, I think, were playing Woodside or someone like that out of Greenville, and it was a very tough game, and Duck had scored most of the points in that game. And then there was a jump ball. Victor was winning 24 to 23. Wait a minute. Yes, 24 to 23. There was a jump ball. It went to Duck, and he dribbled down and scored 2 points on the wrong basket. Okay, and he lost the ball game, and my heart just sank for the kid. I mean, really did. He was laying on the floor sobbing. I mean, he really was. He wasn't this high. And I remember just going out and picking him up, putting my arm around him, and that's the way we supported one another. Now, I want to tell one on Steve Brown here. Okay.
By the way, Doug Stewart is in the Greer High School Athlete Hall of Fame.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
But not for that goal.
Yeah, right.
This guy, Steve Brown, is also, Steve, stand up this minute. Stand up. Steve's also in the Hall of Fame there, but he's in, and also the Ring of Gold. Is it the Ring of Honor? Ring of Honor, yeah. Okay, but he wasn't always that way. He was. He came to me once while I was in high school, and he was a freshman at South Carolina, and. We won't talk about a trip of mine down there one night when things went kind of bad, but I remember him needing a Clemson rat hat. He said, "I need a Clemson rat hat, buddy." And we're going to some high school game in Greer. Remember which school it was, where it was they were playing? But Greer High was playing. And he said, "I've got to have a Clemson rat hat." And so I ran, I said, "All right, we'll see what we can do." So there were a whole bunch of Clemson people sitting together, rats, with their little beanies on, the rat hats. I mean, we're around those days at Clemson.
Well, you didn't lose your rat hat.
Okay, you didn't separate with your rat hat in those days. So I walked by slowly and then snatched it off the boy's head and started running. And Genghis Khan and his golden horde were in pursuit of me. Going out, Brown was in front, and we were both running. And it must have been, it looked like 1,000 people surrounding us around I think it was Greenville High School. We were playing Greenville. And we were back to back, and they had a circle around us. Thankfully, the police came along just in time. But I had my shoe off like that would do some good, you know. But I just had to tell that one, right? I want to talk about the YMCA's influence just for a minute. Victor, Grimmill, Appalach, all of them had good programs. Franklin boys played a lot with the Grimmill and the Grimmill program. And some folks like Tom Wilson, Fred Snoddy, Leon Bradley. It's a little bit hard for me, if there's an emotional part of this for me, it's this part. Because I can still see those faces, and I remember how special those folks were to me. And I think about their influence. And people like, not just the athletic directors, but Ralph Bogan over in Appalach. I remember him working with me in baseball over the summer. I'd drive to Appalach just to listen to that guy working with me, trying to teach me how to hit. Wayne Godfrey, Willard Fowler, Butch Miller, Punchy Howard. All these people were men who played a role in our lives growing up, all of us. And you know, you think about kids today, and we think about how much better they have it, but I'm not so sure that's true. I'm really not. I really don't believe that, because when I think about what all these men had to offer us, and first of all, we have a place to go. We have a place off the street. We have a place where people taught us some respect. And I remember coming up, when I first moved to Greer, by the way, I moved 20 times before I was in 5th grade. 20 times, and I lived in mill villages. That's when the mills were curtailed. And if you were the last hired, you were the first fired. And I remember going to all these different places around. I lived all over, folks. I'm telling you, from Calhoun Falls to Abbeville to Greenwood, I lived a bunch of places, even a little old bitty town in Cross Hill. And I lived a bunch of places, and you felt like sort of what a migrant worker would have gone through. The same lifestyle.
I bet Buck Henson was your mailman, and I bet he hates you for moving so many times.
You're probably right. But one of those stops along the way, I had a principal at Jordan Elementary by the name of Louis Phillips. Now, at that year, the first part of my 5th grade year, my little brother died, 6 months old. The family fell apart, and everything looked lost. And there was a man showed up on my doorstep and told us that you don't worry about books for school this year. You don't worry about books. And I never forgot the man, and later on became a coach at Greer High. And and he was just very special. Leon Bradley was very special. A lot of these people that when you were in the mill villages, we owe a lot to those guys that were the ADs during that time. Red Mahaffey was my principal at Victory Elementary, and a memory about Red Mahaffey was that he was new on the block, and one of my goals was to be a school patrolman. I wanted to be a school patrolman because the school patrolmen, they got to wear these yellow raincoats on rainy days, and they had a hat, and had this little band, and it did have a lot of authority, you know, when you... So, the taller guys ruled. The taller guys ruled. They were a lot more mature, and so I didn't get to be a school patrolman. It kind of bugged me that I got off to a long start. I was smaller and didn't get to be a school patrolman. I was out at recess one day. My mother patched my jeans, and she got a little colorful with them. You know how you patch a quilt? Well, I had my jeans patched, some of those calico or something on my knees. And I was out shooting marbles. That's how we ruined our jeans to begin with, shooting marbles, crawl around the ground. And while I was out there, some kid made some smart comment about my jeans being patched. And who in the world patched those ugly looking jeans or something like that? So I looked up, and the other guys looked at me like, are you going to take that? And so, needless to say, I didn't. And I got up and we went to it, the two of us. We were fighting, rolled around on the ground, and the school patrolman showed up and was ready to arrest me. The gendarmes came and were carrying me away. And I hit one right in the stomach. I just hit him just as hard as I could right in the stomach. He doubled over, but a couple others came over, and we just went on to the office. And I remember sitting outside the principal's office wondering what bad was going to happen. And out comes this new principal. He says, all right, young man, it's your turn. Come on in here. And so he said, sit down there. I said, now what's wrong? What happened? And I told him I didn't feel like the boy should have put his hands on me, you know, to bring me in. He said, I understand. Would you like a Coca-Cola? And I said, sir? He said, a Coca-Cola. Yes, sir. And so he goes over and goes to get a little machine, pops a Coke, and gives it to me. And I sat there and drank a Coca-Cola in school. I didn't know what was going on. I mean, I was thinking that when was the food coming, it made this my last meal, yes. So he said, now, I don't want you doing this again, but we've got to do something here. You know we can't have this, don't you? I said, yes, sir. He said, now I'm going to take this paddle, and when I hit the desk, I want you to make some noise. And so he hit the desk about 5 times, and I yelled. And then he says, well, get out of here and don't let that happen again. You know, so that was a fond memory. A guy that knew how to handle kids a little bit different, Red Mahaffey. We were very fortunate to have these people. You know, you can have a lot of money and you can store it away and die, but you never forget your experiences, and you never forget the people that's in your lives. I wouldn't take anything for a lot of people in this room today, you know, that I grew up with. They were just, I mean, I still love them. And it's amazing that later years in your life that you go back to those people and you remember how really special that they were. I remember Linda Bruce, you know, living down, was it 16th Street? Okay, and Linda, I don't want to tell anything bad about Linda. You know, but I do want you to know that she is giving, she and Gundy are giving free shag lessons here after the thing's over. Okay, and I was kind of shy with girls in those days, but she was my first date, and she doesn't even remember it. That just shows her. She was my first date. We had an 8th grade swimming party at Pine Grove Pool. And in those days, people had, you could get your license when you were 14. And you're talking about a different world here. Because they let some 8th graders drive their cars to Pine Grove. And I remember riding with Johnny Cerner, and Linda Bruce was in the car with me to Pine Grove, you know, and I just sort of worship girls from afar in that day. You know, I really was a kind of shy. About as close as you got to them was, you know, if I take a shortcut from the Y down through 16th Street, you pass those Genobles girls and the Wilson, Gail Wilson, and then Linda Bruce. And I used to see their underwear hanging out on the line. Now that was about as close as I got, you know, in those days. That was it. But I would have to make some little remark about if they had holes in them or something, you know. And I think there's some ladies over there that we jerked hers off the line and made a pump tin out of it. But it kept leaking.
Very sweet.
So y'all make sure you get those shag lessons. Judy Gradley over here, you know, she would sneak into the Y. You didn't see too many girls around the Y, but they did have a girls' basketball team. In fact, I worked with my sister shooting down in the Y. She played at Victor. Victor had a team, and Judy would come in there. She and Pat Cox, and I remember it's Mac Allen and I would play ping pong doubles. And now she's grown up. She's a big tennis player. About as close as you got to girls was the girls were on one end in PE, the boys are on the other end, and you could look at them in those cute little gym suits that they wore down. And both of them looked good in those gym suits. Greer was a hot rod town in the 50s and 60s. And I know, how many of you guys in here were hot rodders? took a car and souped it up a little bit. Raise your hand if you souped up the car a little bit. I can remember, you know, hanging out at Lewis's or places like that. A lot of us used to hang out at Bruce's lunch.
Bruce?
Yeah. Levita, Bruce, Miles now. She was, she's got the chili recipe, right? You got the chili recipe. If y'all need a chili recipe of a good chili dog, they didn't call them chili dogs, they call them hot dog chili. If you ordered a chili dog in Greer, you got nothing but the chili in the bun. That's it. And onions and mustard, of course. But today, a lot of people, they say chili dog, they expect the women in there with it. You know. That just wasn't the way. But it was a good hot dog. Grady Bruce put up with a lot. With us. He put up with a lot. And I remember standing around in front of Lewis's out there and seeing all these beautiful cars just come by. It's like a scene out of American Graffiti. You know, they'd load as they came down. They had them all shined up, looking good. And here comes Bowman in his 49 Chevrolet with an upholstery hanging down. And I kept asking, Dad, why don't we trade cars? He said, why? You get there and just, Dad, God, just something a little bit faster, a little bit nicer looking, etc. And he says, look at it like this. You know they were not going out with you for your money. Godfrey, Stan Godfrey and I had a notion to go down to, we're gonna thumb to the beach. We had 10 dogs between us. We're gonna thumb to the beach. After we got down there, we'd go out and hang out with some of these house parties that were going on between Ocean Drive and Cherry Grove down there. And I remember us catching a ride below Columbia, and Godfrey says, I'm getting shotgun. I said, well, go ahead. And so he jumps up in the shotgun seat, and I got in the back seat of this 49 Mercury, and it had no windshield on Godfrey's side. Had no windshield on his side, and the man driving never said a word. When we got in the car, he would drive along and he'd look at you. You know, he wasn't smiling. He'd drive some more and he'd. And Godfrey turned around and gave me that look like, be ready to run. We may have a hatchet murderer here. Okay, so be ready to run. So we were. We got out of that okay, as you can see, but he put us out. He says, I'm going to turn here. That's all the man said. I'm going to turn here. He stopped, we opened the door, and he put us out in the middle of a 5-mile swamp or somewhere like that. How many of you hitchhiked? How many hitchhiked? Raise your hand. One? Okay. I always did. I picked them up. I was just curious because there were a lot of them. There were a lot of them that did it in that day. Now you're talking about living better today, but do you have your groceries delivered? We had ours delivered. They came by, picked up our dry cleaning. What else? Milkman came by. What else? Charlie's Chips, like some other things they don't have today. Coffee Man, Jewel Tea. The Spur Cola. Whoever drank the Spur Cola? No? The doctor made house calls. Yeah. The Spur Cola guy. I drank Spur Colas, believe it or not. I drank Spur Colas. And the guy came by and says, how many Spur Cola bottles do you have in your house? 5 or 6, I know. He said, go get them. I went and got them. He counted out $6 silver because I had the Spur Colas. He was going around to see how many people drank the Spur Colas. I don't know who the guy was to this day, but I took his $6 silver. Okay, I'm going to turn this over back to Gundy, let him tell a tale or two or pass it on to somebody else. And if you need me again later in the future, we'll do it. Okay.
Okay, can y'all hear me? I can't. Okay. Thank you, Buddy. Buddy always tells some good stories, and we're just glad he drove up from around the Atlanta suburb area up here to be with us, to tell some tales. Great guy, as you can tell, good storyteller. Now, kind of open mic time if somebody wants to come up, or Lisa can bring the wireless over to you. Somebody wants to say something. Now's the time to do it. Raise your hand. Amy, come up here. You can come up here. Amy Clarity.
Thank you. I just want to say a little something about what Buddy said. Butch Miller was my hero and still is my hero. He was the greatest guy, I thought, when I was little, that had ever lived. But yeah, when I was 7 years old, they used to play the basketball at the Y's at Greer Y. Butch Miller was on the team. My mother told me, do not run up and down these steps on the seats. You got to sit down and behave. So, you know, I acted like I did, and then when she wasn't looking, I was running up and down the steps. Well, while I was doing that, my leg went through, and there was a nail sticking out about yay big. Tore my leg up. So once I noticed I had done that, I went and sat down by my mother like I'm fine, and then it started pouring down my leg. Butch Miller was on the basketball court, saw me off the basketball court, picked me up in his arms, carried me out the door as they were taking me to the hospital. That's my Butch Miller story.
Anybody else?
Let's let Eddie Donald go, because he was
Okay. Here comes Eddie Donald. Got something to say. So y'all, now be a good time to take a restroom break. Go outside the road or something. But anyway, here he is.
Class is up.
For you folks that don't know me, I'm Eddie Donald. And the ones that really don't know me, I have a steak glass shop on the corner down there. Y'all come and see me. I'd like to to ditto something Buddy said, mainly about Butch Miller. You know, there were a lot of these men, Butch Miller, Ted Lindsay, Coach Phillips, were like second dads to us. Kept us straight outside the house. We don't have that today, that I know of. But I was a shortstop for Butch Miller as a 12-year-old. And I'm standing there making fun of the catcher because he can't catch the ball. So he says, Donald, come over here. He says, get that stuff off. Donald, put that stuff on. So I put on all the catcher's equipment. And the first time, of course, I didn't have a problem with it. You know. First time I squatted, I stripped my pants to the bottom of my zipper. And decided I'd had enough, and the catcher was doing a pretty good job. And that was truly, at 12 years old, the first time I'd ever showed my ass. I had to walk my bicycle home because it was kind of uphill and I'd have to stand up to pedal. So I had to walk my bicycle. I was wondering if Leland Prim was here. No. Okay, well then this story is about Topper. We back in those days we weren't old enough to go to bars, so we'd go over to Grumman's and pick up our beer because he'd sell it to anybody. So, you know, back in those days, what you did was you just rode around and you drank a beer and you throw it in somebody's yard because you knew it'd get picked up. And so Topper, Leland, Topper said, let's go over to the country club and break into my daddy's shed and take a ride in the golf cart. So we're like, okay, sounds like fun. So it's pitch black, no moon, just stars. There's 5 of us. Myself, Mike Henson, Butch Fowler, Topper, and Mike Henson. So we go riding in this golf cart. And Topper, he's got it wide open, and we're like, Topper, slow this thing down. And you know how he talks. I know this golf course like the back of my hand. So about that time, he takes a right, and we're at the top of a knoll, and this golf cart flips about 4 times down the fairway. And we're just like, good thing we were half lit, or somebody would have really gotten hurt. So we're all laying on the ground, the golf cart's upside down, we're all just laughing, wetting our pants, and whatever. 18 batteries are laid out across the fairway. The Topper's going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? You know how he talks. So thanks to Mr. James' freshman physics class, we knew how to rewire those batteries in a series. So Barry Casey goes up to his really nice 64 Pontiac Le Mans. Had the best stereo system, had a reverb unit in it, I mean all the good stuff. And we go up and we strip out all the speaker wires out of his 64 Pontiac. And we go back down. We're stacking the batteries back in the back of the golf cart. And everybody's got a positive and a negative and a positive and a negative and a positive and a negative. And we cripple this thing back up to Mr. Prim's shed. And of course we take off. And of course he asked his son Topper the next day if he knew anything about somebody might breaking into his shed and wrecking his golf cart. Of course Topper said, no, no. So Mr. Prim, he didn't beat around the bush. He just called Barry Casey because Barry can't tell him why. Barry told him that yes, we broke into it, and that was the end of it. He didn't call our parents. you know, that was the neat part, because all of our groups, every parent was another parent. Topper's daddy let us drink beer and watch Carolina basketball, but we had to eat popcorn. Mike's mother would let us steal cigarettes. She knew it, but she didn't say anything. So, you know, it was just the way it was back then. My last story, again, this is about Topper. I don't know why I'm picking on him, but of course that was a little later on when we were riding around with girls and stuff. So, and so Topper says, why don't we go to the golf course again? Of course, he lived there, so he felt like a young party. And said, let's break into the swimming pool and go skinny dipping. So we're all, yeah, it's fine with us. I got two girls, we're going, yeah, it's fine with us. So we, they weren't from Greer. The girls from Greer wouldn't go with us. So we break into the swimming pool, and we all strip down and we get in the swimming pool, but there's no lights in it. So that kind of put a damper on things. And Topper says, well, I know what to do. You know how to talk. So he went and he cut on the lights inside, under the water, in the pool. So that was really nice. So we're splashing around and having fun. And the next thing you know, Ed Mabry pulls up. Gap Creek. Those who don't know, Ed was a constable back then. Carried a badge and a gun. He was arrested. So he parks down there on Gap Creek, and he gets the loudspeaker out, and he goes, Topper, you, Eddie, Butch, Mike, get them girls out of there and get out of here right now. I'm going to the corner, and I'm going to turn around and come back, and you better be gone. We don't even know if he got back. We were gone. And that's all right.
Anybody else? Kim Hoffman, you want to say something?
Where did you get back? No, I'm mad. I'm getting to recognize somebody from the product.
The night's not over yet. Okay, Eddie Harvey is ready to speak with us. And,
Jim.
before we do this, I'm reading I have a personal signed copy of Eddie's book at home, so I was reading it. Don't mind me reading something out of it. Take the glasses on so I can see. All right.
You can give a second.
I paid $15 for mine. $8 and they're signing
It's well worth the reading, by the way.
something in here I was reading this afternoon, and I know that Eddie won't mind me reading it. So if I can find it right here. Little thing, this is a great book. If you guys don't have it, you need to get it. Okay, this is direct out of Eddie's book. There was no email, microwave, manicure, money market, personal days off, Bowflex, fake nails, remote control, entrees, Viagra, riding mowers, Q-tip, push-up bras, hairspray, disposable diapers, butane liners, gas grills, Ziploc bags, skylights, Jiffy Lube, bipolar syndrome, Cocoa Puffs, CDs, CNN, LSD, refrigerators, wrap, or beer on tap. See, that's the time that we grew up in. There were no nursing homes except for the room in a son or daughter's house. They took care of you. Now it's your turn. Nobody thought about retirement or health care benefits. There were none. A benefit was a job that paid you by the hour. If you didn't like it, there was a line of folks that did. So, there you go. Everybody remembers that. So, appreciate it, Eddie, and here's Eddie.
I'd also like to thank, I can't remember names very well, the owners of this property. And if I can lower this, I might sit there for a while.
Make yourself comfortable.
There we go. Can you hear all right? My name is Eddie Roy Hart. Named after both my grandfathers, Eddie and Roy. And I grew up on 19 Gill Street in Greer Mill, which is about 2 miles from here. My mother and daddy worked in Greer Mill all their life, that I remember anyway. And like Buddy said, everything Buddy said reminded me of a story. But I didn't write them down, so I don't know where to start. But I would like to say that Webster's definition of nostalgia is the wistful memory of things past. Now that's a pretty good definition of what we all, I think, would like to come back to. It's a time that when things were simple. When we didn't have the day covered up with just trying to get by in life, filling prescriptions and paying power bills, answering phone calls. But I remember this story right here. Bells and Collins, Roy Collins, always meet you halfway if he wasn't already at the front door. You have to take measurements and everything. And right about here, Roy, August 1949, August 1949, I was starting Duke Street School. Mother brought me up here to buy school clothes. School clothes was overalls, blue jeans, plaid shirt or something, some socks, some Brogan shoes. Everybody know what Brogans are. But that was what you wore to school every day. And when you got home from school, you had to take them clothes off. But I remember Roy standing right here in the middle of the store, and he said, "Miss Ruth, I think we need to go over here to the Husky table." I wrote a little story. I've got a couple of things. I don't know how much time, that clock's not working, I can tell you. I didn't want to wear out my welcome. But next holiday we got was coming up is Valentine's Day, of which I'm trying. That's the mental note not to forget that because my wife Marilyn sent it. The next one is Easter, and I want to tell you a little story about Easter. You remember when they used to sell these little colored chicken? I think you could buy them down at McClellan's. McClellan's dime store was a couple of doors down. And I think you paid a nickel or a dime for them. They had them. And I don't know how they did this, but they were yellow as they could be. And I think they just dipped them in dye or something. But one year my brother, I don't remember having chickens myself, but He got 2 of them. And we lived in Mill House down here. And these little divvies, as we called them, was real cute. But long about summertime, those divvies grew up. Well, he had 2 of them. One of them turned out to be a white, just pure white hen. The other one was a rooster. Now, there were people that had chickens on the mill hill, but they had them in pens. These were pets, so they ran free. I guess that's free-range chickens. Anyway, the rooster looked like a gamecock, South Carolina gamecock. He had a red head. And I remember when we first started in the summertime or springtime, raising the windows, we did have screens, but keep the gnats and everything out. But that rooster would wake you up as soon as that sun just peaked just a little bit. And that rooster grew up, and I guess, I don't know a lot about chickens, probably Campbell or some other people could tell you more about farming than I could. I did enough of it working on my uncle's farm to know that ain't what I wanted to do. But anyway, these chickens grew up, and the rooster, I imagine, I don't know, but he's got a lot of chickens to play with. And that rooster was mean. You couldn't go out the back door unless that rooster would be on you. He'd peck you and flabber, try to get up in your face. Well, just having one hen in the neighborhood, she had a time. That rooster was, he was potent, let's just say. That rooster, bless her little heart, he jumped her so many times that just, I don't know how they do that, but it was on her back. And he'd peck her head. I don't know what that was about, but by summertime, by the time Mother would make us, we couldn't go barefooted until the first day of May. I don't know where that rule comes from. By the time we could go barefooted, that chicken was bald. That is no kidding. The chicken, it was white up to here, and it was bald. And this rooster was, he was he's always looking around, you know, like, and that chicken would hide under the house. It would get up in the chaneyberry tree. Anybody know what chaneyberry tree is? Chaneyberry. Now the real name is Chinaberry, but it was chaneyberry. But anyway, that poor old hen, by the time that the meal let off for the 4th of July, I remember going out on the back porch one day, and that rooster had already done it, I guess, and he was sitting on the back fence. And that hen walking across the yard, kind of wobbling. She got halfway across the yard and just fell over dead. Well, my brother, he's 4 years younger than me. And at that time, that just broke his heart. I mean, he cried over that chicken. We buried it in the backyard somewhere. And Mama went out and by herself captured that rooster and did one of those. And They did everything in the backyard. I don't know if y'all remember that. They washed clothes in the iron pot back there. I remember that. Then she moved on up to the washing machine. You had to crank it or something. And then you roll, and you get your fingers caught in that. Anyway, you clean chickens out there, and you burnt garbage. We didn't have the garbage, man. We had no oil drum. And you threw everything. Didn't have garbage disposal. You took everything out there in the brown paper bag that you got your groceries in, throw it in there, and then we just set it on fire. That was an awful smelling, burning, and I can remember it to this day. But anyway, that's the story of the no, I didn't finish it. I think Mama boiled that chicken and made soup out of it for the next week. Have I got some tea? How much time do I have? I've got stories about Buddy Bowman too, but I'm gonna wait till later on that. Oh yeah, in the mill hill we had, everybody had territories. And then Victor, y'all you know more about what your territories were than I knew what the matter. I knew where I was safe.
Right.
All right. We were safe below the P&N Railroad track. Not above, because we was in Franklin. We were safe all the way to South Main Street. And we didn't ever have too much trouble with Victor. There was a lot more Victor people than Greer Mill, but we never had any trouble with them because we had a no man's land, which was from South Main over to Harmon's and the ice plant over there. And so that was, we had a natural boundary. We could make them in there when they didn't have too much trouble. But on the other side of Frohawk Creek was the Massengales and the Bodies. Oh, but none of them in here that might whoop my ass again. If you cross Frohawk Creek, you better keep your eyes open because they would jump you many times you got over that way. I have we could go on all night, but I know that that's not kosher. But I'm doing another book. If y'all allow me, I'll read a couple stories I got. They'll be in there. This one is the first grade. And then later, I've got one that I really want to get into. It's called Old Sayings and Stuff. Now, in the first book, I've got a lot of words that are synonymous with that period of time and also with the textile industry. But this is old things that we are losing mighty fast. So I want to go, maybe take a little break, go outside and smoke or something. I'll come back and do that. I'm one of the last. First grade. I started first grade at Duke Street School in September 1949 and was introduced to discipline outside my mom and dad or neighbors who had authority to take care of any problem that they were a witness to. Now we had Miss Vaughn, our teacher. I don't remember what I did to deserve her wrath. I must have blocked it out of my mind. But the old brain did not block out sitting in the dark cloakroom in the back of the class for hours on end. Anybody know what a cloakroom is? A cloakroom was where you hung your coat in. And it had sliding doors on it. And it was dark. This is Butte Street.
Make out in there?
It was like a convict that screwed up and got thrown in solitary in the hole. I don't remember why at regular intervals she would bend my little chubby hand back until my fingers touched my elbow. And whack my palm 10 times with a wooden ruler. After this outrageous public humiliation, I would be led to the cloakroom and she would close the 2 sliding doors, leaving me in total darkness. I remember I spent most of the winter of 1949 in the dark room with steaming hands. It must be like breaking a horse, that indoctrination of school discipline. But I finally succumbed to the bit and became a model student. What I learned, the most important thing, what I learned in first grade is you gotta go along to get along. I'll go ahead and tell that story about Buddy. In high school, we used to spend, I guess I spent a cumulative time of maybe 5 years sitting at the clock driving. Everybody remember what the clock was? Bigger people say Lewis is mostly, and then after that, I think they went day and day. The clock was right in the middle. But I was a hot rodder too. My first car was a 39 Ford Coach. Black. On one side. I paid D&L $40 for it. No, excuse me, $80. I had $40. I got my license when I was 14. I had $40 saved up on the paper route that I got from, which led me into another story about panties on the clothesline. I'm gonna let that one go. Anyway, I borrowed $40 from Mom. And when my parents thought as soon as you could walk, you needed to be working. And matter of fact, that ain't a bad way to bring up kids, you know. Give them some chores, give them some responsibility, and make them learn how to use money and how important it is. But anyway, my mama made me pay her that whole $40 back. Sure. Yeah, and you could get gas for 17 cents a gallon. And that car was painted black, so shiny and pretty on one side. But it was painted right down the center of the hood, right across the top and down the back. Anybody remember what a 39 Ford Coach looked like? Anyway, it was primered on one side, shiny on the other, but I drove that thing to school until I blew it up out here on the super highway. Had 48 Ford engine in it. But that car was so pretty on one side and it looked like crap on the other, so I would always park the car with the shiny side to the street. And if you ever, you know, when you're going back and forth on Poinsett going to Greer High, you saw a girl, everybody walked back then, you know. We walked to school before I got my automobile. But if you see a girl and you was on that bad side, you go down a couple blocks and turn around, you know, ride by with your arm out the window so they could see you with the shiny side.
Get your muscle up good like that so you can show your muscles.
with air conditioning. Those wing windows. I'm gonna step down for a minute and give my throat a break. And
Steve Campbell, Buddy's got something to say about what Eddie said, so it's rebuttal time.
No, he's good right now.
Okay, he's good. Steve Campbell's going
I remember Eddie and I spent a lot of late nights around the clock. Remember Eddie and I spent a few late nights around the clock out there. We told quite a few stories in that prepared for this.
Sure.
Very quickly. I'll just tell a little story about after I finished high school, a good friend of mine, we finished through Terry Dawson and Tommy Smith. One Friday afternoon, me and Tommy driving around. Just loud enough.
Turn it up.
We were riding
around. Those that don't know, this is Steve Campbell.
I went to Appalachia. Anyway, Tom and I were riding around one Friday afternoon, and he had a little BMW 2002. And somehow we got drinking. And the more we drank, we ended up in Nashville, Tennessee. Since I played banjo, I was in hog heaven, so we went down to 2nd Avenue in this place called the Picking Parlor. And we met a few friends there. So that night we looked for a place to go, so we went up to Printer's Alley. Anybody's ever been to Nashville? Printer's Alley, it's a little, just a few clubs and a very narrow place. So there's a place called the Black Poodle. It was a nude bar. I don't know why we went there. They had a girl dancing called Heaven Lee. Still remember her name.
Some things you don't forget.
They got two guys up on stage, she did, and made a fool out of them, big time. And we were dying laughing. So Tom and I said, we'd love to come up here sometime and have Terry Thompson and let him make a fool out of him. So, about a month later, we made another road trip with Terry. Didn't tell him nothing about this place. So we got some way we got a suite. And it's huge, got two big old rooms in it. And the first time we ever had I'm from Greer, so we had keys when these motels popped in. They had a card. First one I ever said, we couldn't figure out how to use it. Of course, we've been drinking again. So. But anyway, we went out that night and we went to the Black Poodle. Didn't tell Terry nothing about this. So he had hurt leg. He had his knee operated on. He was limping. So I think Peter probably remembers all this. We went in and I tipped the lady and let her put us on the front row. So she did. Terry still don't know nothing about it. 4 or 5 days to come out and do the routine and Kevin Lee came out. So she said, I need a volunteer from the audience. And I said, here's one. She said, you. Terry got up. And she called him tall one, but he was about 6'2", we were about 5'11", so he got up and she said, take your shirt off. She took her shirt off. And she was telling all these different things. She said, take your pants off. He said, I ain't taking my pants off. He got all flustered up and he got down and me and Tommy was dying. So he sat down and put his shirt back on. And she said, how about you? Look at me. I don't know anybody up here. I just got up. Went through, she took my shirt off, took my pants off. I sat there with boxer shorts on, nothing else. I looked, Tommy's taking his clothes off. He got up there with me. Look, here comes Terry. All three of us and Greer standing there with boxer shorts on. Then we had to turn around and shoot a moon, not shoot a moon, but show our butts to the audience. And Terry had skid marks. That's about as clean I can get this story going. It gets worse as we go along. I'm going to leave it at that.
Are they inside the building?
They are in the middle. They're in the back there.
I see people now.
Brown and
It goes downhill from here. Steve Brandon was my phone. Okay, keep things rolling along here. Big boys in the house.
There's a big boy side.
So now my time since he's here, I get to talk about big boys before he takes the microphone. So they won't say that about you when you wasn't here. Yeah, so Don Brown and I raised like 3 houses apart. Favorite son of Lewis and raised on 21st Street. Most famous guy from 21st Street, Victor. Y'all don't know Don, you're in for a treat because he's gonna tell the biggest lies you ever heard in your life. I mean, if his mouth moving, he's lying. Don and I have a long history together, and I am not even going to get there because he's probably going to tell a little bit of lie about me, and I'm just going to let it go with that. So he's got his time coming up. He'll be up here in a minute, but I remember when Don played high school football, and I was on the varsity team, he was on the high school team, so I didn't get to travel with the varsity. Jim Hawton playing on the varsity, Don Brown, Steve Greer, not varsity. But Steve Greer had a Greenbrier band. You remember that Greenbrier? You remember that? Anybody else remember what a Greenbrier band is? Steve Greer had one. It was a band, a Chevrolet band, like the first one in Greer. And it had like a 5-speed transmission in it and about 8 seats in it. Well, Steve would come by, we practiced football. We practiced football twice a day before the season started. It started sometime in August. Well, Steve Greer lived Pleasant Grove. He lived over there with the rich people. So he'd come by, he'd leave home early and stop by, make a route through Victor and pick everybody up. Because all the football players lived on Victor. So he'd come through, he'd go to Don Brown's house. He lived on 21st Street. He'd go around the curve, come up there and pick the Stewart boys up. we lived on 20th Street, right behind Don. Well, about 2 houses down on the next street. So he'd come by and pick us up. We'd go around, go by and pick the Gamble boys up. Then we'd go on up and practice football. Well, we practicing twice a day. You practice twice a day. We practice like 8 o'clock in the morning. Then you take a break, come back about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, being a bunch of high school kids, between morning practice and afternoon practice, there's a lot of idle time. So we try to fill that time in. I don't know if Don remembers this or not, but funny thing, of course this August, this summertime, it's watermelon harvest time. Now there used to be a lot of farming around Greer. A lot of farming going on. So we decided, well, I was the youngest one in the crowd, so I just along for the ride. So they go down in this guy's watermelon patch somewhere down toward Duncan, between like Regal area, somewhere down that way. In this Greenbrier van to go out in this man's watermelon patch and load this van up with watermelons. Now what are we gonna do with a bunch of watermelons? We gotta go practice football. Well, the old guy sees us out there and he jumps in his car and comes chasing. So Greer gets that Greenbrier wound up. We're going up this old country road. And Don opened the side door on that thing and just throwing watermelons out. Like the guy's not going to see the watermelons coming out of that thing. That's a true story. I don't know where he went, but he was there. Anyway, there he is right there. But that's just one of the fun stories about Don Brown and Steve Greer. We had a big time in that old Greenbrier band. But Don, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead. Steve Brown. Steve Brown got a mic.
I was going to say that Don Brown, he's a legend in Greer, and he is from 21st Street. Myself, I'm from 21st Street. I was born and raised on 21st Street in Victor, and I'm very proud of it. Don lived that street with me, and Gundy said that the legend, Don Brown from 21st Street, but I was also from 21st Street. I will say too that Don Brown, he's a great fella. He's a comedian. You'll look forward to hearing what he has to say. But I would like to say too that he is a Hall of Fame member of the Greer High School. Welcome, Don Brown.
Thank you. Thank you.
Boy, they don't treat me this nice at a family reunion. That's good. I come in here and see all these liars. I don't know what they said about me, but let me tell you, since Joel Beaver and those people got the advertising on television, I have taken some medicine. And ain't nobody read me my rights, so anything I say can't be held against me. It might not be true.